In 1961, a psychologist placed an ad in a newspaper. He was looking for volunteers for a simple memory study. What he got instead was one of the most disturbing experiments in the history of science. And the participants who went the furthest, the ones who did the most damage, weren't the uneducated ones. They were the smart ones. Stay with me because by the end of this video, you'll understand why intelligence, the thing you were told protects you, might actually be your biggest vulnerability, and more importantly, you'll know exactly what to do about it. Here's something that almost nobody talks about. Every major cult, every financial scam, every political propaganda campaign in history has one thing in common. They don't target the weak-minded, they target the educated, the curious, the analytical, you. Now, before you close this video thinking this doesn't apply to you, that's actually the first sign that it does, because the #1 prerequisite for being successfully manipulated is the absolute certainty that you cannot be. Let's break down exactly why. Reason 1. Your brain is too good at finding patterns, and manipulators know it. Here's something fascinating about how your brain works. The smarter you are, the faster your brain connects dots. It's an evolutionary advantage. You see relationships between things that other people miss. But here's the trap. That same pattern-finding engine also works on information that was deliberately designed to mislead you. A skilled manipulator doesn't give you a lie. They give you 9 truths and 1 strategically placed lie. And your intelligent brain, it sees the 9 truths, builds a confident pattern, and fills in the lie automatically, without ever questioning it. Psychologists call this apophenia, the tendency to perceive meaningful connections between unrelated things. And research consistently shows it's stronger in people with higher IQs. There's a reason con artists specifically target people who think of themselves as smart, because smart people are faster to rationalize. They fill in the blanks with their own intelligence, and they trust that intelligence completely. That trust is the weapon. Reason 2. The more you know, the more confident you become, and confidence makes you careless. You've probably heard of the Dunning-Kruger effect, the idea that incompetent people are too ignorant to know they're incompetent, but almost nobody talks about what happens at the other end of that curve. Because yes, true experts do develop more humility over time, but in the middle, that dangerous middle ground where you know a lot but not everything, confidence spikes to its absolute peak. And that's exactly where most intelligent, educated people spend most of their lives. Smart enough to be certain, not yet wise enough to doubt themselves. In a 2020 study from Yale University, researchers found that people who scored highest on analytical thinking tests were also the most susceptible to believing false claims, once those claims were framed in complex, academic-sounding language. Not simpler language, more complex language. Because their brains were primed to recognize that complexity as a signal of credibility. Manipulators know this. That's why cults have manifestos. That's why scams use financial terminology. That's why propaganda uses the language of academia. The smarter you are, the better that packaging works on you. Reason 3. Intelligent people argue themselves into traps. Let me tell you about a man named Arthur. Arthur was a physicist, published researcher, multiple degrees, widely respected in his field, and in his 50s, Arthur lost his entire retirement savings to a Ponzi scheme. Not because he was desperate, not because he didn't understand finance, but because when his financial advisor presented the investment opportunity, Arthur did something his lesser educated neighbors never did. He analyzed it. He built a mental model, he found the logic in it, he ran through counter-arguments, and dismissed them. He convinced himself. Psychologists call this motivated reasoning, the process of using your intelligence not to find truth, but to defend a conclusion you've already emotionally reached. And here is the brutal part. The smarter you are, the better you are at motivated reasoning, because you have more tools to build the justification, more knowledge to cherry pick from, more rhetorical skill to silence the doubt. Your intelligence becomes a law firm, hired to defend a guilty client. It doesn't matter whether the client is innocent, it just matters that the lawyer is brilliant. Reason 4. You've been trained to trust systems, and manipulators build fake systems. Think about how you were educated. 12, 16, maybe 20 years of your life were spent learning to defer to authority, listen to the teacher, read the textbook, trust the expert, obey the credential. That conditioning is not a flaw in the education system. It's actually deeply rational. Experts generally are right, systems generally do work, authority generally is earned. But that same trust, applied to a system that was engineered to look legitimate, becomes a perfect trap. In 1971, Stanley Milgram's obedience experiments showed that 65% of ordinary people, educated, normal, morally sound people, would administer what they believed were lethal electric shocks to a stranger simply because a man in a white coat calmly told them to continue. No threats, no force, just the appearance of a legitimate authority within a legitimate-looking system. For the more highly educated participants, compliance rates were even higher because they had the most practice trusting systems. The more your brain has been trained to work within legitimate structures, the more devastating a false one becomes. Reason 5. The smarter you are, the more your identity gets tied to your beliefs, and that's exactly what cults exploit. Here's a question I want you to sit with for a second. What happens inside you when someone tells you that you're wrong? For most people, it's uncomfortable, but for intelligent people, people who have built their identity around being right, being wrong isn't just uncomfortable, it's a threat to who they are. Neuroscience confirms this. When your deeply held beliefs are challenged, your brain activates the same neural regions as physical pain. The smarter you are, the more deeply you've thought through your worldview. And the more deeply you've thought through something, the more pain you feel when someone challenges it. Cults understand this perfectly. They don't start by demanding your loyalty. They start by offering you a worldview that feels satisfying, that finally makes sense of things you always found confusing. Your intelligent brain builds on it, connects it to things you already believe, makes it yours. And by the time anyone tries to pull you out, they're not just arguing with a bad idea, they're arguing with you. And intelligent people are very, very good at winning arguments, even when they're on the wrong side. This brings us to something I need to tell you about geniuses. Isaac Newton, co-inventor of calculus, the man who gave us the laws of motion, lost the equivalent of millions of dollars in the South Sea Company bubble of 1720. He reportedly said afterward, "I can calculate the motion of heavenly bodies, but not the madness of men." Linus Pauling, double Nobel Prize winner, spent decades staking his reputation on megadose vitamin C as a cure for cancer, refusing to update his position even as evidence mounted against it. Arthur Conan Doyle, the creator of the most rational fictional mind in history, Sherlock Holmes, was himself a devoted believer in fairies. He was publicly conned by 2 children with cardboard cutouts. These weren't foolish men. They were some of the greatest minds in human history, and every single one of them fell into the same trap, believing that the intelligence that made them exceptional in their domain made them immune in all others. It doesn't. Domain expertise is not the same as manipulation resistance, and the higher you climb in your field, the more you're targeted. So, what do you actually do about this? First, separate how you feel about an idea from how true it is. This sounds obvious. It is not obvious in practice. The next time you find yourself feeling excited by an idea, especially one that seems to confirm things you already believe, treat that excitement as a warning signal, not a reason to dismiss the idea, just a reason to pause. Ask one question: what would have to be true for this to be false? If you can't answer that question, you don't understand the idea, you've been captured by it. Second, seek out the best possible version of the opposing argument. Not a straw man, not the weakest critic, the strongest, most intelligent challenge to your position you can find. This is called steel manning, and it is one of the most powerful cognitive tools available to you. Intelligent people are often extraordinarily good at tearing apart weak arguments, but defeating a strong argument is a different skill, and a much rarer one. Train that muscle. Third, create pre-commitments. Decide your values before you're in the room. The reason so many intelligent people get pulled into manipulative systems is that the manipulation happens incrementally. First, it's a small yes, then a slightly bigger yes. Then you've gone so far that turning back feels like admitting you were foolish. Pre-commitment means you write down in advance, before you're emotionally invested, what your non-negotiables are, what you will never do, what you will never give, what you will never believe without independent verification. When those lines are written down before the pressure begins, they are extraordinarily hard to cross, even for the most charismatic manipulator. Fourth, and this is the most important one, be suspicious of any idea, group, or person that makes you feel special for understanding something others don't. That feeling of being among the enlightened, the few who really get it, is the single most reliable warning sign that you are being manipulated, because that feeling doesn't come from truth. It comes from a very calculated decision by someone else to make you feel that way. Here's the truth about intelligence and manipulation. The goal was never to make you distrust your intelligence. Your intelligence is one of the most valuable things you have, but intelligence without awareness is like a powerful car with no brakes. It doesn't keep you safe, it just means you travel further before the crash. The Milgram participants who refused, the 35% who didn't comply, weren't less intelligent. They had simply made a decision before they walked in the door. They knew what they would and wouldn't do, before anyone gave them a reason to question it. That's not less intelligence, that's intelligence directed inward, and that is genuinely rare. If you made it this far, really paid attention, you already have something most people don't. You have awareness, and awareness is the only thing manipulation cannot survive. Now, the next video in this series goes even deeper. We're going to look at one of the most financially successful manipulation systems in modern history. A group that specifically recruited PhDs, doctors, and lawyers, and we're going to walk through exactly how it was done, step by step. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss that one, because the next lesson is one you will never forget.